After dinner, when the women headed out of the dining room, Elizabeth quickly went to check on her sister. Jane was wrapped up warm, so Elizabeth walked her into the drawing room. The moment they entered, Jane was greeted like a celebrity. Miss Bingley and Mrs. Hurst were all smiles, acting super friendly, and honestly, Elizabeth had never seen them this pleasant. For about an hour before the men showed up, the vibe was actually great. The ladies were chatting nonstop, sharing funny stories, cracking jokes, and laughing like they were having the best time ever. But the second the gentlemen walked in, everything shifted. Jane instantly stopped being the center of attention. Miss Bingley's eyes locked straight onto Darcy like a heat-seeking missile. She rushed to talk to him before he'd even crossed the room. Darcy politely congratulated Jane on feeling better. Mr. Hurst gave a lazy bow and muttered he was very glad. But Bingley? Oh, that guy was next level happy, full-on golden retriever energy. For the next 30 minutes, Bingley was basically playing firefighter, stacking up the fire so Jane wouldn't catch cold. Then he made her move farther from the door just to be safe. After that, he sat right next to her and barely talked to anyone else. Elizabeth noticed everything from across the room and was loving it. After tea, Mr. Hurst tried to push for cards, but nope, total fail. Miss Bingley had already found out Darcy wasn't into cards, so she shut that idea down fast. Mr. Hurst tried again, got rejected again, and finally gave up. He stretched out on a sofa and passed out like a champ. Darcy grabbed a book. Miss Bingley copied him. Mrs. Hurst mostly played with her jewelry and occasionally jumped into Bingley's conversation with Jane. Now here's where it gets funny. Miss Bingley wasn't really reading. She was watching Darcy read, like tracking his progress page by page. She kept asking him questions or peeking at his book. Darcy answered politely but stayed locked in. No flirting, no vibes. Eventually, Miss Bingley got bored, yawned dramatically, and said how amazing reading was and how she couldn't imagine life without books. Total performance. No one responded. Awkward silence. She yawned again, tossed her book aside, and scanned the room like, "Someone entertain me." When she heard Bingley mention a ball to Jane, she jumped in fast, warning him that not everyone might enjoy dancing, clearly throwing shade at Darcy. Bingley laughed it off and said the ball was happening no matter what. Soup first, invitations later. Miss Bingley complained that balls were boring and said people should just talk instead of dance. Bingley basically replied, "Cool idea, but then it wouldn't be a ball." She didn't argue, just got up and started walking around the room. Her walk was graceful, clearly meant to get Darcy's attention, but didn't work. The man stayed glued to his book. So she tried again, this time using Elizabeth. She invited Elizabeth to walk with her. Elizabeth was surprised, but agreed. And boom, it worked. Darcy finally looked up and even closed his book. Miss Bingley invited him to join them, but Darcy declined, saying he could think of only 2 reasons they were walking, and either way, him joining would ruin it. Miss Bingley was confused and annoyed. Elizabeth told her not to ask about it, figuring Darcy was just being sarcastic. Of course, Miss Bingley had to know. Darcy explained either they had secrets to discuss or they just wanted to show off their figures, and either way, he preferred watching from his seat. Miss Bingley was offended. Elizabeth thought it was hilarious and suggested teasing him back, but Miss Bingley claimed Darcy was impossible to tease. Elizabeth, on the other hand, loved a good laugh and wasn't afraid of Darcy at all. Their conversation turned into playful arguing about pride, vanity, flaws, and personality. Darcy admitted he wasn't perfect, especially when it came to holding grudges. Elizabeth said that was definitely a flaw, but not one she could laugh at. They went back and forth, clearly enjoying the mental sparring. Miss Bingley, feeling totally left out, finally demanded music. The piano came out, Mr. Hurst was woken up, and Darcy, after thinking it over, was honestly relieved. He realized he was getting way too into Elizabeth, and that was dangerous territory. The next morning, Elizabeth wrote to her mom asking for the carriage so they could go home, but Mrs. Bennet wasn't happy about it. She wanted them to stay until Tuesday and made it very clear. She even added that if the Bingleys wanted them to stay longer, that was totally fine with her. Elizabeth, though, was done. She didn't want to overstay her welcome. She convinced Jane to ask Bingley for the carriage, and after some discussion, they agreed to leave that morning. Everyone at Netherfield acted sad about it. Miss Bingley tried to get Jane to stay another day, but Elizabeth could tell she didn't really mean it. She liked Jane, but she definitely didn't like Elizabeth. Bingley was genuinely upset and kept saying Jane wasn't well enough to travel. Jane appreciated it, but stood her ground. Darcy, meanwhile, was secretly relieved. Elizabeth had been around long enough and way more distracting than he liked to admit. Plus, Miss Bingley was being extra annoying. Darcy decided to lock things down emotionally. No flirting, no extra attention, nothing that might give Elizabeth the wrong idea. And he stuck to it. On Saturday, he barely spoke to her. Even when they were alone for half an hour, he stayed buried in his book and didn't even look at her. By Sunday, they finally left. Miss Bingley suddenly became very polite to Elizabeth. Too polite, honestly. She hugged Jane dramatically and even shook Elizabeth's hand. Elizabeth left in high spirits. Back at home, their mom wasn't thrilled. She complained they'd come back too soon and worried Jane would get sick again. Their dad, though, quiet, was clearly happy to have them back. The house just hadn't felt the same without them. Mary was still deep in her serious studies, ready to share moral lessons nobody asked for. Lydia and Kitty had the real gossip: regimental drama, officers visiting, a soldier getting punished, and rumors that Colonel Forster might be getting married. And just like that, life at Longbourn was back to normal, full of noise, opinions, and chaos.